Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Walt Lanier, pastor of the Progressive Baptist Church, and also president and CEO of Great Lakes Urban Empowerment Solutions and lead facilitator of Black Men Organizing. We welcome you this evening to our second webinar on education in Milwaukee. When I say our webinar, I'm talking about a group of brothers that has begun to gather informally but intentionally with the idea of building connections with all of the positive work that's going on here in the city, because there are so many of us doing great work. We're not creating anything new, but rather we are looking to build a bridge and connectivity. One friend of mine called us a Rubik's Cube. I like that because we're all part of the same thing, and we're rotating and get the pieces together. And so thankful for that, and follow up with me on that for more information. I'm joined by Baba Derek Rogers and also by Dr. Howard Fuller. This is our second installment. I want to provide some brief context. Then I'm going to put you into Derek's hands, and we're going to move into our presentation. As we know, Lala Mandela, Nelson Mandela said, education is one of the most powerful things with which we can change the world. And we know that we have a deep passion in our community. Everybody who's here with us, certainly Dr. Fuller and Baba, deep passion for education here in Milwaukee. Our landscape is complex, facing significant challenges. We know the challenges of the public school system with enrollment challenges, financial challenges, absentee challenges, achievement gaps, but even beyond the K through 12 system. A recent Forbes study, regrettably, ranked Milwaukee last out of 100 major cities in terms of educational attainment, not just for K through 12, but looking at our post-secondary institutions, with only 33.5% of adults holding a bachelor's degree or higher, and just 10.8% having a graduate school or professional degree. Also, Wisconsin Policy Forum, Dr. Mark Levine and others have done some reports talking about our challenges. Lots of people have done reports. What we want to do is to dig deeper. We had to have Dr. Fuller here with us to engage us richly. I'm going to put you into the hands now of my big brother, my elder brother, Baba Derek Rogers. He's going to introduce where we are along the journey, and then we will hear from Dr. Fuller. Just a reminder, please put questions, observations, thoughts into the chat line so we can do our best to get them captured during the course of the presentation.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Pastor, and I'm appreciative of this opportunity to spend some time with the community around a subject that, as you said, is near and dear to my heart, and to be able to spend this time with Dr. Fuller, who I consider to be, in Ethiopia, they use the term jegna as opposed to mentor. A jegna is one of those individuals who serves the community, has spent their life in support of uplifting, empowering the people. So I'm extremely appreciative anytime I can spend some time in his space. Derek Rogers, a former longtime educator in Milwaukee Public Schools, and just longtime educator in community, among some other organizations. I'm also the founder of the Exodus Academy Educational Services and the Milwaukee Black Liberation Theology Project. I'm blessed to be able to present Dr. Fuller, someone who has spent a majority of his life in one form or another, whether it be educating, our youth for service in terms of solving the problems of their people and community, or whether it be educating all of our people around the need to and how to engage the fight to empower our people. So in one form or another, he's been educating folks for a long time. And I just want to briefly just go back through some history real quick. We're talking going all the way back into the late 60s in North Carolina, through anti-poverty work with Operation Breakthrough, and his founding of Malcolm X Liberation University, which was a libertarian, offered a libertarian Pan-Africanist approach to education. And then coming into the 70s, much of his work internationally and throughout this country, through the early to mid 70s, leading decolonization efforts relative to Africa, anti-imperialism, that led to initiatives like African Liberation Day, the African Liberation Support Committee, the National Black Political Convention, the Sixth Pan-African Congress. All of this stuff had an educational foundation, at its roots. If you come into the 80s here in this city, Dr. Fuller, with his work with the Coalition to Save North Division, even the Coalition for Justice for Ernie Lacy, all of these were again connected to either the empowerment of our youth or educating our people around justice and liberation. Then we come into the 90s, and I think that's really where even more so he deepened here in Milwaukee, deepened the recognition of what I like to call this psychoacademic holocaust that is occurring relative to our children, and this compulsory miseducation is something else that I like to refer to what's happening with our young people. And as superintendent of MPS, he developed or was helped to lead the development of 2 African-American immersion schools here in this city, specifically for our children. That was Malcolm X Academy, some who may remember, and Dr. King Elementary School, which is still a part of Milwaukee Public Schools. And then, of course, later in the 90s, he had a seminal role in school choice efforts. And I'll just take the administrative prerogative to say this is my emphasis when I say it was a role that was never rooted in a conservative agenda to privatize public schools, but has always been grounded in an ongoing quest to provide Black students a quality and empowering education by any means necessary. So with that said, I just want to open it up to Dr. Fuller. He's got some things he wants to talk to us about this overall Milwaukee Black educational ecosystem. He's got some milestones that he wants to share with us. So we're going to let him have at it. Doc, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Baba, and Pastor Lanier, and then obviously to all of those of you who have decided to use your valuable time to join us this evening. I really appreciate, and I'm honored to be asked to, spend some time with you all. And I have a very specific objective that I want to try to accomplish tonight. And I'm actually sitting in our school. The lights just went off up here on the 3rd floor. But so here's what I want to try to do. I want to try to set a context for what it is that we have today. Baba mentioned the term education ecosystem in the city of Milwaukee, or what I initially termed a system of schools instead of a school system. But what's important to me, and what I hope you all will get out of tonight's discussion, and I hope there'll be a way, for you to ask me questions as I go through this. Sometimes what happens is we enter into a current reality without understanding the history of how we got here. And what I believe is that this history of how we got here is crucial to understanding the issues, the problems, the differences of opinion, and whatever that we have today about what we have. And I don't expect that as Black people, we're going to ever all agree on any particular thing. But what I hope we can ultimately agree on is that the education of our children is a critical factor in trying to determine not only the course of their life, but the course of all of our lives, because of the significant role that our young people will play, not in the future, but in the present and the future. So with that said, I want to jump into, for lack of a better way to call it, I'm going to walk through sort of a chronology of dates and incidents and fights and laws and whatever that created this education ecosystem. Now, you could choose to begin at any point, but I'm going to begin in 1965. And I'm going to begin with the Milwaukee school desegregation case that was filed in federal court. And those of you who know a little bit about the history of this know that Lloyd Barbie was the critical factor in filing this lawsuit and the creation of an organization called Music. But so in 1965, the deseg case was filed in federal court, essentially making the case that Milwaukee was purposely segregated and that it violated Brown versus the Board of Education, both Brown 1 and Brown 2. The case wound its way through courts, and while it was going through the court system, a couple of things happened. Number one, April 3rd, 1975, a bill was introduced called Assembly Bill 572, or another way to talk about it was the Conta Bill. Because you know how people are even today talking about we should break up Milwaukee public schools, which I don't agree with. But anyway, whatever it is that people are talking about, you should know that there's been several efforts that have been made to break up the Milwaukee public schools. The one that I want to zero in on first is this Assembly Bill 572. Because what Assembly Bill 572 was going to do back in 1975 was to create what Dennis called a East Side School District. And what they were going to do was to take Shorewood and Whitefish Bay, and then a number of schools on the east side, Riverside, and a number of other middle schools and elementary schools that existed on the east side of Milwaukee, and create a East Side School District. But what happened is when that got introduced in the legislature, the compromise was because this was introduced April 3rd, 1975. The compromise back in 1975 was the enactment of Chapter 220. And some of you on this Zoom participated in Chapter 220. And what Chapter 220 did was to create the possibility of inter-district and intra-district transfers for the purpose of integration. And so the inter-district part of Chapter 220 was Black students being sent out of Milwaukee, their parents choosing to send them out of Milwaukee to school systems surrounding Milwaukee, whether it was Nicolet, Mequon, West Allis, wherever it was that parents wanted to send their children other than the Milwaukee public schools. It was also possible for white kids to come into the city of Milwaukee. That happened, not very much of that happened, except like High School of the Arts, for example, or some of the language immersion schools. And so this was passed in 75. It went into effect 1976, 1977. Intra-district transfer was busing children from all over, from one attendance area, like Our Avenue, for example, where they went into Our Avenue and bused Black children to over 100 different elementary schools around the city of Milwaukee. And for each one of those Black kids that got on a bus, the Milwaukee public school system got money. So while a lot of the focus for Chapter 220 has always been on the inter-district transfer, the vast majority of the money was going into the intra-district transfer. Although the inter-district transfer was a boon for the suburban schools who at that time needed population. And not only did they get whatever was their per pupil cost, they also got something called a bonus aid. So how we got to Chapter 220 was Dennis Conta introducing a bill to break up the Milwaukee public school system and create an East Side School District, and the compromise was Chapter 220. Then in 1976, Judge Reynolds ruled that the Milwaukee public schools were illegally segregated. So just remember, the suit was filed in 65. It was 11 years later that Judge Reynolds made the decision that, yes, indeed, Milwaukee's school system was illegally segregated. So when he made that decision, there are other things happened. And something I want you to know about, it's called the Comprehensive Plan for Increasing Educational Opportunities and Improving Racial Balance in Milwaukee Public Schools. This was issued in December of 1976. I found it when I was doing my dissertation. On page 97 of that document, MPS says that it is their responsibility to give white people the psychological guarantee that they will never have to go to a school that is predominantly minority. That's in writing. And so I want you all to stay with me here conceptually. So you have a desegregation case in court. You have people coming in saying, let's break up MPS. You create Chapter 220. You put out this comprehensive plan for so-called racial balance. And then finally, 3 years later, Judge Reynolds accepts and agrees to a plan that was put together to desegregate the Milwaukee Public Schools. The NAACP was against the plan, in part because the plan left out 20 schools on the north side. So they just simply said, there's no way that we can integrate these 20 schools. So we're going to have an integration plan for the rest of the city, but we're going to leave out these 20 all-Black schools because there's no way that we can integrate them. Then what happened was in June of 1979, we created the Coalition to Save North Division because the school board came up with a plan to close North Division to neighborhood kids and make North Division a citywide specialty school. And the students from North walked out. One of the people in the leadership of that was Pastor Greg, but LaRonda Bearden, all of them were students at North at that time. And they came to me and said, would you, as an alumni of North, come help us? So I was the leader of a group called the Coalition to Save North. And we went to battle with the school board. And finally, we came to an out-of-court settlement with them in April of 1980. So we started the coalition in June of 79. Almost a year later, we came to an out-of-court settlement with the school board that said that North would remain a neighborhood school, but with a medical specialty. And I want to make a point here so you all understand where we were and where we are today. The attendance goal for North Division in 1980, when we agreed to that settlement, was 2,000 kids. And there was supposed to be a racial balance of 60% Black and 40% non-Black. Although these white people knew, wasn't no white people coming to North Division, man, because they were not going to require white people to get on a bus to desegregate North. And one of the things you all should realize is when this whole desegregation thing happened, Larry Harwell, Katina Young Harwell's father, was the one who created the organization Two Way or No Way. Because way back then, we were protesting the fact that all of the kids getting on buses were Black kids. And that's something we can talk about if you all want to. So here we are in 1979, the Coalition to Save North, the out-of-court settlement in 1980. Then in 1984, a study commission was created. It was called the Study Commission on the Quality of Education in Metropolitan Milwaukee. And this commission gave the Iowa test for basic skills and got grade point averages for every MPS school. All of the schools in Milwaukee County, they all took the same test: Menominee Falls, Mequon, Thiensville, New Berlin, and Elmbrook. And so this commission And I can tell you all how it got started if you want to know, because I was one of the reasons that they did this. And so the report came out in 1985. And what that report showed was that in every single school in the city of Milwaukee, there was a racial gap between white kids and black kids. And that at the high school level, every high school in the city had a grade point average of less than D, with the exception of King, because King was a school for the college bound. Then in 1985, the legislature passed the Children at Risk program. That's what allowed schools to get created that were called alternative schools. When I became superintendent, I changed the name to partnership schools. So that's Shalom, El Puente, and the one black school that is still in existence that was a part of this was Asada. And Asada was started by Rose Massey, and her daughter Carlotta now runs Asada. Then in August of 1987, and I know this is a lot of dates, but I'm trying to lay it out sort of chronologically. Then on August 11, 1987, I had organized a group of people and I wrote a thing called the Manifesto for New Directions in Education of Black Children in the city of Milwaukee. And 27 Black people and 8 Black organizations signed it. And essentially what we called for was the creation of a separate school district. So that in February of 1988, I gave a speech before the entire state legislature and called for the creation of the new North Division School District. And the new North Division School District was going to be made up of North Division, Parkman, schools like Lee, Hopkins, Franklin, all of these elementary schools on the north side of Milwaukee, our avenue. All of those are going to become a part of the new North Division School District. And we actually got a vote through the assembly to approve this district, but it was killed in the Senate. And so the bill to create this new North Division School District, Assembly Bill 850, was done in March of 1988, and it was defeated in March of 1988. That led to the passage of the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program in 1989. So for all of y'all who talking about, whoever's talking about, it was privatization, white people, it wasn't none of that. It was a struggle by Black people in this community to educate poor Black children. And when the MPS said, for whatever reasons, they couldn't do it, wouldn't do it, they wouldn't let us create our own school district, then we logically said, let us out of here. And so that led to the creation of the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program. And Polly Williams, who everybody should know, was the courageous, Polly was one of the most courageous individuals I have ever known, to stand up back in 1988 and say, yeah, I support vouchers for poor Black children in the city of Milwaukee. The vehemence, the venom that came down on Polly's head was enormous. And so that's how the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program got created. And it started out as only sectarian schools. And so that first year, there were 7 schools, 350 kids. Harambe, Bruce Guadalupe, there was a couple other schools, and there was one bogus school called Juanita Virgil that this brother came in and scammed the community, but that's another story. So that happened in 1989. In 1993, the first charter bill was passed in the state of Wisconsin, because charters became a reality in 1991 with the first charter bill being passed in Minnesota. We passed the bill in 1993 that was a weak bill, and I can explain why it was weak. because it only allowed 10 school districts in the state to create 2 charter schools. And I was superintendent at the time, and even though I fought for the bill, I did not use it in Milwaukee because it was too weak. It didn't allow for independence. So then in 1995, they changed the law to allow every school district to create charter schools. But it was while that was going on, in 1995, the legislature expanded the Milwaukee Pro-Choice Program to include religious schools. And as soon as they voted on that, the NAACP, the ACLU, the unions took it to court. And so it was in court until 1998. And I'll come back to it in a moment. So in 1995, then the legislature said, okay, religious schools can now be a part of the Milwaukee Pro-Choice Program. And then it went to court. In 1997, the legislature passed the open enrollment program, which most people don't even know about, but it allows you to attend any school district in the state of Wisconsin. A parent can choose to send their kids from Milwaukee to Wausau. And so if you look at the data today, you'll see that there's any number of people who are using open enrollment in order to go to suburban school districts as opposed to MPS. In 1997, the charter school law was expanded to allow the city of Milwaukee, Milwaukee Public Schools, and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and MATC to authorize charters. Except MATC never took the authority because the union at MATC blocked it. And then in 1998, the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that religious schools participating in the Milwaukee Pro-Choice Program was constitutional. That is how we got to the educational ecosystem that we have today. So I'm open for questions before we go on.
Thank you, Doc. That history, that chronology is critical because it hopefully it has informed a lot of people on, first of all, the amount of struggle that has gone into where we are here today. And I think from there, I think that should take a lot of the people who are in attendance tonight into quite a few questions, because we have a lot of concerned folks here. We have a lot of individuals who have received a lot of misinformation around the history of Black education in this city. Some of us have even, and many, as you alluded to on this line, because, for example, myself, I was one of those individuals in 1976, one of the first individuals. Brown Deer, along with Nicolay, I believe, were the first 2 school districts in the Milwaukee area to open up to Chapter 220. So I was one of those individuals getting off a yellow bus, coming from the Garden Homes neighborhood out into Brown Deer. So some of us have even lived this. So that's another part that I find interesting here. We got some questions in the chat. So I think that's where I would like to start. Let me see. I just got to move some stuff over here, be able to see some things better. Okay.
I will tell you we have Deontay Holmes has his.
Is that Dante?
Has a question. He's got his hand up, so I'm gonna go to Deontay. And then Angela Harris has a question.
Yeah, I see him.
And then Brad Bernard has a question.
Yeah, I actually see him.
I'll go to Sister Harris. Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
I see a question. And I also see Brad's question, and I see Jane's question too. So Angela, here's the reason why we wanted an alternative. first of all, I want to say something in terms of how you frame your question, because I think it's really, really important. In my mind, I have always made a distinction between public education and the systems that deliver it. So in my mind, the Milwaukee Public Schools is not public education. It's one delivery system for public education. And so when you look at the city of Milwaukee, public education in the city of Milwaukee is delivered by traditional MPS schools, charter schools, and there are two types of charter schools: instrumentality charter schools and non-instrumentality charter schools. And the difference is, succinctly, is if you're an instrumentality charter school, the employees are employees of the district and the teachers union contract applies. If you are a non-instrumentality charter school, you're chartered by either MPS, the city, or UWM. You have your own separate board, like the Dr. Howard Fuller Collegiate Academy. We are our own 501c3. The money comes directly to our school from the state. It does not go through MPS. And the employees of our school are employees of HFCA. So you have the charter schools, the two types. You have private schools. And in private schools, there are private pay people, and then there are people who get to these private schools using the voucher, using the special needs scholarship, or some of them even use the Wisconsin private school program, like like the Milwaukee Pro-Choice program. You have home schools, you have partnership schools, and you have open enrollment. Now, Angela, reason why we fought back when we did to get an alternative was we first went to MPS to say, what can you all do to educate poor Black kids? Because they're not being educated. When we created the study commission in '85, it was the first time that we saw all of the data for every single school laid out by race. Because McMurrin, who was the superintendent at that time, this white man would stand in a rain, in a thunderstorm, and tell you that the sun was shining. And so when we sat in his conference room, which improbably became my conference room, and asked him, how come you did not tell us how bad our children were doing? This man told us to our face, number one, we didn't tell you because Black parents could not stand to know how bad their children was doing. And number two, it would have given fodder to the racists who believed that Black children could not learn. So, Angela, what we did was we said, look, MPS is not able to educate our children for whatever reason. You won't let us create our own school district. So logically for us, it was give us a way out of here. And it wasn't based on any kind of free market ideology or any of that. It was based on struggle. It was based on our kids are not being educated. We keep telling you that. You won't let us create our own district. And I can tell you what was behind, if you want to, the creation of that district. And since you won't do it, you won't let us create our own district, give us a way out of here. And in Polly's way of looking at the world, it was going to allow us to begin to create our own schools, which today, one of the things that tears my heart out is that Black people were the tip of the spear to create these options that exist in the city. I did a study in 2009. There were only 51 schools that were controlled by Black people. By control, I don't mean the principal. I mean, who controls the board? Who controls the policy-making apparatus? There were 51. 49 private schools and 2 charter schools. Today, there's less than 15. And with everything that is happening in this city, which we can talk about, I'm afraid that that number, over the next 5 years, given some population data I can share with you, or Walter can, whatever, it's going to be even less. But let me stop there, Angela, because that's the reason why we decided to fight for the alternative structure.
Thanks, Doc. Let me go to a couple places, a couple questions. The next person who had put their hand up, so some people in the chat, some people in the Q&A, Dante Holmes was next. Kendall, I see your question.
Which one was so?
Same,
I
the
see
same,
Brad's
is it the
question.
same as open enrollment?
Say that again.
Go ahead. You go ahead. The chat. My signal is bad.
Okay, it was a question about open enrollment. That one I don't see. I do see Brad's question. So I'll get to that, then we can come back to that one about open enrollment. First of all, Brad, there is no charter school system. What there are charters, but each charter is independent. It has its own. So don't think of it in the way that you think about MPS as a school district. And so what that means is each charter school can separately determine what curriculum approach it's going to use, what teaching and learning strategies it's going to use. It's just that you have to meet certain benchmarks set up by your authorizer, test scores, attendance, et cetera, depending upon who your authorizer is. And so what you will find, for example, if you were to come into our school, you might not see a STEM, is what I think you meant when you said STEAM. I think you meant STEM curriculum, science, technology, and that. But if you come into our school and you look at our science lab, especially our new high school, and you look at the maker space, and you look at the professional recording studio, particularly the science lab and the maker space, you will find that, for example, in the maker space, we're dealing with robotics, we're dealing with drones, we're dealing with teaching kids how to create their own podcasts. But if you go into our science labs, you will see the implementation of a science curriculum, biology, chemistry, physics. And so although we don't have a, quote, STEM curriculum, we're focused in those areas that most people would consider STEM. And so I think you'd have to look to see what each school is doing. But there is no charter system per se. It's each individual school. Oh, so James asked me why I didn't continue to be superintendent. Okay, so I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. I could lie, but I'm gonna tell you the truth. So what happened was, I had just signed a new 2-year contract. Number one, you should know that. But the union ran a slate against me, and they elected 4 new board members, and one of them was Leon Todd. I hate Leon Todd, and I hope he hates me, because it should be a comparable hatred. And there was no way in hell I was going to let this man tell me what to do, period. And so once that new school board got elected, even though, I still had a majority of 1, I was like, and I wrote my own headline, James, and you can appreciate this, man. I went to the journal editorial board and I wrote my own headline. Because the way that I function in this world is, unless you plan on dying in a job, you can leave 1 year too early or 1 year too late. The trick is to figure out which year you're in. And I believe that you should always leave on your own terms before they beat you up and then you walk out limping and your reputation has been destroyed. So I was like, even though y'all just signed me to a new 2-year contract, all my friends said, Howard, make them buy you out. And I thought that was unethical. And so I said, no, I'm not going to have the school board spend money on me to go to kids. I'm just going to resign and they don't owe me nothing. And so I resigned, James, because this was the headline I wrote. I refuse to die death of 1,000 cuts. Because I knew what was going to happen to me with that new board was every day they were going to prick me with razors. And I was going to be looking out at the community, but I was going to be bleeding to death from all these razor cuts that I was getting on my back. And I wasn't going out like that. So I went out on my own terms.
Pastor, before we jump to the next question, one thing that that I think ties directly into the chronology that Dr. Fuller gave, I've in speaking with him throughout the summer, he has shared some other very critical considerations that I know he's been sharing in community and with leaders. So Doc, do this for me real quick. I just want to take this prerogative real quick. Talk a little bit about some of those demographic trends that you've been speaking about that impact the future of that Black education ecosystem and even how that impacts some of the current Black-led educational institutions in this city.
Yeah, I'm trying to convene a meeting on them, as you know, but Dante, I did want to say chapter 220 is almost all gone. It's been almost phased out, and it is not the same as open enrollment in the sense that chapter 220 was really set up to promote desegregation, and open enrollment it has nothing to do with race, and what it does is that if you have a child living in Milwaukee, but you wanted them to go to Mequon, let's say, or Wauwatosa, you could use open enrollment, but Wauwatosa would have to say, we have room. You'd have to pay for your own transportation in order to get there. So there's some differences between 220 and open enrollment. So they're not the same, and they were set up for different reasons. Hopefully that helps, but if not, come back at me. So the demographics that Baba is talking about is real critical. So again, James, I apologize because I'm getting ready to give y'all some more numbers and stuff, but there's no way to answer the question without doing that. So in 2006, there was 123,989 kids of elementary and secondary ages, right? 123,989. In 2024, that number was 108,439. So between 2006 and 2024, there was a 13% drop in the total student population in the city of Milwaukee. And what they are predicting is that by 2030, there will be 20% fewer kids going into first grade. Now just keep that in mind. You got a decline in birth rate. They're predicting that by 2030, there's going to be 20% fewer kids going into the first grade. Hold that thought for a minute. So let me go back to this decline in population. So in 2006, MPS had 89,189 kids. In 2024, they have 59,712, a drop of 33%. In 2006, private schools using the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program for the student population was 11,613. 2024, it was 30,103, a 90% increase. Charters in 2006 was 7,323. In 2024, 15,695. In 2006, in this city, private pay students was 11,613. 2024, 2,929, a drop of 75%. Now, what is all of this? I mean, what do all of these numbers mean? Here's what you all going to have to think about. You know, when I say you all, I mean, I'm talking about, this generation, y'all gonna have to figure this stuff out. Okay, so think about those numbers that I just gave you. The Milwaukee Public Schools has 149 buildings, including 5 that are used by MPS non-instrumentality charters, Milwaukee College Prep, Hopper, Carmen, as example. There are 130 schools participating in the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program. 85 of those schools are inside the boundaries of the city of Milwaukee. There are 21 charters. What does this all mean? What this means is, and I've been studying the capacity data, and y'all know this to be true. North Division could literally, it was built for 2,000 kids, at least 1,800 kids. If there's 350 kids in MPS on a given day, I'm overcounting. What I am telling you all is there's a drop in the birth rate. There are these predictions about what's going to happen only 5 years from now in terms of the number of kids going into the first grade. Yet we got all these school buildings. How's that going to work? How long do you think North Division is going to be able to sit over there with capacity for 1,800 kids, and you got 300 and some kids in there on a given day? You may have less than 500 kids right now in Washington High School. That's the problem, Baba.
Thank you. Who we got up next there, Pastor? Who do you see? You see something else there you want to touch?
Yeah, Angela. So here's how the African immersion programs happen. So when Bob Peterkin came to be the superintendent, and his deputy was Deborah McGriff, who turned out to be my wife, but that's another story. So what happened was Joyce Mallory was on the school board, and Joyce wanted to create 2 schools for Black boys. That's how this all started, y'all. And people like now, the National Organization of Women, all these people came out of the woodwork. No, you can't have no school just for boys and blah, blah, blah. So the compromise was to create 2 African immersion schools. Berger, the name was changed to Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School. When I became superintendent, people came and said, we want to change the name of Fulton to Malcolm X, just so y'all know. And Marcia Cox was one of the leaders of this effort to change the name from Fulton to Malcolm X. When I took over as superintendent, Debbie and Bob had negotiated turning these two schools into African American schools, but they had not negotiated the staffing. So when I came in as superintendent, I was like, hey, we need to get some more Black people teaching in these two African American immersion schools. And there were 7 openings. And what I wanted to do was I had 7 Black teachers volunteer to be transferred, 3 to Martin Luther King and 4 to Malcolm X. The union filed a suit against me because they said it was a violation of their contract. And I tried to negotiate with them to say, hey, look, I'm not, because they said what I was trying to do was to get all Black teachers in North and in the schools on the North side. That was stupid because we didn't even have enough Black teachers to do that, even if I wanted to do that, which I didn't. And so they told me I couldn't do it. I said, the hell with y'all, I'm doing it anyway. Take me to court, which they did, and I lost because I did violate the contract because I just put the Black teachers over there. So hopefully, Angela, that answers your question. And Jim, you asked when it was realized that whites would not agree to be bused in the North, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, your question is, after the slots were held for them and kids were allowed to come to North that following year from various, was 2,000 student goal? No, we never had 2,000 kids come into North. In fact, Jim, when I was superintendent, the population at North was beginning to decline, and I'm the one who put the village school into North Division because I was trying to sustain the population at North. You know, even way back then, I was concerned about maintaining the population at North Division. But we never got close to 2,000 kids. Charles, 2 years after Amos came the Armstrong case, which dealt with faculty. Yeah, the union MTA was signatory on an agreement, which was never achieved. That's correct. And thanks for bringing that up, Charles, because most people don't realize that the deseg stuff wasn't just about students. There also was an agreement on the percentage of teachers. And so I think, Charles, that that consent decree said 16% as the minimum. I thought it was 24% like that as the maximum number of Black teachers that you could have. Because what you all need to realize that in that out-of-court settlement, they set it up. I want to explain as clear as I can. They would say, for example, anytime a school became more than 40% Black, it was not desegregated. Even if it was 45% Black, 55% white, there was too many Black kids. And so they set the deseg thing up so that a desegregated school was like 70-25. You never could have more than 40% Black kids in any school because they didn't want white kids to be uncomfortable with too many Black children in a school. So when y'all, I hope y'all hear, like, in my voice, the anger that will never, ever dissipate because of the way that Black people and Black children have been treated in this city. And any of y'all who don't understand that, you living in a dream world, or not even a dream world, a nightmare world for Black people. And it's been that way.
Doc, can you hear me?
Let me answer this. So Zakaria asks, has there ever been any challenges? Yes. So Zakaria, when the legislature passed the law in 1995 to allow religious schools to participate, it was taken to court immediately. And so then it was in 1998 when it was 4 years later, when the Wisconsin Supreme Court made the decision that the involvement of religious schools was not unconstitutional according to the state constitution. And it wasn't until the Zellman case went to the National Supreme Court that it was ruled that it wasn't unconstitutional nationally. The reason why the Wisconsin Supreme Court said it was not unconstitutional was that, number one, there was not excessive government entanglement. Number two, there were enough safeguards in the bill that protected taxpayers. And then there was a third thing that they mentioned. So yeah, it was challenged, and it did go to both the state Supreme Court, and then the Zellman case out of Cleveland went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Rowan, thanks for that. The arts, because if you come to our school, you're going to see a lot of the arts, especially not just the recording arts. Y'all got to come see our recording studio, man. But in addition to the recording studio, we have a full-time art teacher, and we have the maker space. And so the art room and the maker space, those of you who toured the building know, is right next to each other. Is the hatred worth it? Probably not. But, James, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not telling anybody to be like me, man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but it don't stop nothing, but, what can I tell you? I don't know what to say.
Can you hear me okay, Doc?
Yes, I can hear you.
One question that everything is relevant. This is policy in the future. I want to ask at least one of these right now questions. Kendall Allen asked your thoughts about the current environment in the school system. The top three solutions: bad security tactics, bad crowd control in and out of schools, and bad assessment to prevent violence.
Yeah. So let me respond to something that Kyle asked.
Yep.
Kyle, we've organized citywide task force before, and I'm not saying it wouldn't work if they did it again. But look, man, if I was the czar, which I'll never be, I would totally change the governance structure. And what I would create would be a entity that would be responsible for the implementation of a children's agenda in the city of Milwaukee. One part of the children's agenda would be education. The other part would be health, social, emotional. It would be housing. It would be all of the things that affect our children, right? But that we would bring it under one large umbrella. And each one of those entities, like education, health, etc., they would have their own work to do. But what I would also work on is how can collaboration take place? Because some of the problems that Walter just said, y'all know that if you teach in a school today, I don't care what school you in, you doing God's work, man. This is hard work. And every day in these buildings, our children bring issues that have nothing necessarily to do with school. Some do, but many of them don't. It's all of the stuff that's happening to them before they get to the school. So if you read Evicted, for example, so that you can understand what it's like to be poor in Milwaukee and trying to find housing. So that what I'm trying to suggest is there's not going to be any significant improvement in the education of our children unless there's significant improvement in the life of our children. Unless there's significant improvement in the violence that they deal with before they ever get to us. The fact that our kids come to us hungry. The fact that our kids come to us after being sexually abused. That our kids come to us after having slept in a car the night before or are moving from house to house. We don't, look, man, like I just wrote an article where I was responding to the question of how come things like No Child Left Behind or reading things fail. The reason why all of this fails is because the political risk structure writ large in this country don't give a damn about poor Black and brown children. Because if they did, and all of these programs that we set up, which ain't working, there would be an immediate like, okay, all hands on deck. What are we going to do? This didn't work. What are we going to do to fix it? What are we going to do about this? The reason why that doesn't happen is because the children that those of you on this Zoom care about, the political structure writ large don't give a damn about them. And we don't have enough Black people who are in various positions who are willing to say to hell with this position, I'm going to fight for Black children. But that's just me. That's just how I feel. So, you know, Bob, you asked the question, what are your recommendations for solutions? I'm going to tell you, brother, what I'm going to do is, but this is me because I got a limited time left. I'm not telling you all to do this. I'm going to concentrate on trying to make sure, to the degree that I can, that the children who attend the Dr. Howard Fuller Collegiate Academy, 6 through 12, get the best education possible, get the best facilities possible, get the best of whatever it is that we can offer, that they get that. And to the degree that there's anybody else in this city who's working on what can we do to improve the condition of our children, and if there's anything that I can add to that, I will. But that's where I'm at, Bob. Hey, James, I talked to the founder of the Seed Academies. I talked to him before he came to my office when I was working at Marquette, Raj, before he formed the first seed school. And as you know, there was an effort to form a seed school in Milwaukee. I still believe that the concept of a seed school is still something that ought to be a part of the education ecosystem that we have in Milwaukee. I personally think we should reconsider it.
Let's do one or two more and then prepare to wind down. Go ahead, Dr. Fuller, you pick.
Oh yeah. Well, Baba knows this, and I'm telling you, Walter, if a group of people want to come visit our school, all you gotta do is let me know, and I'll be very happy to take you on a tour of our school. And here's something I want to say to you all. On Friday, last Friday, they let me speak to the population of high school students. We started this school 21 years ago. And we started with 33 students. On last Friday, we had 500 kids sitting in our gym. You know what's important about that? Is that we're not scared to bring all 500 kids together in a single place. And they will sit and they will listen. I ain't had to talk over nobody, and nobody. I mean, if we create the right environments for our children, I'm not saying there ain't gonna be problems, because there are gonna be problems. If you have a school, there are gonna be problems. But if we create the right environment for our children, and we love our children, and we tell them we love them, and we work with them in ways that reflect that, we can help our kids. We can change the trajectory of the lives of our children, in spite of all the problems that they're experiencing. It's always going to be more difficult because of the conditions of poverty and all of that. But we can still make a difference in the lives of our children.
You know, what you shared here today should help us, as, you know, we all have individually, you know, explored, you know, our own notions of what we think is best, you know, in terms of, you know, educating Black youth in our community. The connection between that and, of course, the empowerment of our community. I think we all need to, you know, as we reassess these things and as we, you know, kind of marinate on some of these thoughts, I always talk a lot about the importance of even the way we look at even how we define, you know, educational success or educational achievement. And I think you have made the point, and your history has helped make the point, that somewhere in that definition, that redefinition, that expansion of what Black success, Black educational success, Black educational excellence looks like, it must be tied to the solutions of the problems of our community, you know, and our people, and how we can better not only survive, but thrive